Let's go.
Welcome to the EdjSports Coach Rankings Show. I'm your host, Katie George. Be sure to follow EdjSports on all social media platforms. That's EdjSports on all social media platforms. You can look down in the description and find those links below. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe to EdjSports to get our weekly coach ranking show, as well as betting analysis updates as well. I'm joined each week by Ian O'Connor, Senior Data Analyst at EdjSports. How was the weekend? Great games. Did you celebrate the Lions' first win of the season?
I did. Action-packed. All good college games, good pro games. Talking before, both my teams were off this week, so I got to watch as just a fan, not having any rooting interest in any game. But it was cool to see the Lions win, and it helps that Minnesota lost, helping the Green Bay Packers out in the NFC North. So good to see it.
I loved getting to see Dan Campbell's emotional victory speech afterwards. That was, of course, a big day for them. Again, be sure to like this video and subscribe and follow EdjSports on Twitter to join the conversation and send us your warm regards. Not a lot of movement in this week's coach ranking. Some coaches just moved up one or two spots while others remained in place. So there are a few that stand out. Where are we in terms of coach rankings this week?
Yeah, the top three remain the same. It's Brandon Staley holding his place at number one. I think that's 3 weeks in a row now in 4 of the first 5 that he's been number one. We've got Green Bay coach Matt LaFleur at second, and then Arizona's Cliff Kingsbury still in third place. The top 10 remain unchanged. There is some movement here and there, a couple coaches moving up a spot, down a spot, but the top 10 coaches are still the same. The biggest mover this week is Dan Campbell. After the big win over Minnesota, he moves up 7 spots overall to 22nd. He's up 14 spots in CCI to 6. So he was up pretty high earlier in the year. He had a rough couple of weeks there coming into this week. Had kind of had some.
Had a rough couple of weeks.
They did, and he had some fourth downs that he would typically go for that he wasn't going for. But this week, early on, he had the 4th and 1 at their own 41. I think on the opening drive or their first drive, did not convert that one, but he stuck with it. And late in the game, he had the 4th and 1 at his own 28-yard line. The play call maybe wasn't the best, kind of rolling out Jared Goff there and having Detroit not block a couple guys, but it worked out. They had enough time left where Minnesota did score, but they had the time left, and that's part of the reason you go for it in that situation. You're likely to get that first down, but if you don't, the other team's already kind of in field goal range. There was, I think, 2 or 4 minutes left in that game. So if Minnesota's going to score, they're not going to take up the whole clock like they would if you punt the ball away. So he was almost the GOAT in that one. They didn't get it. But Jared Goff was able to hit Amon-Ra St. Brown, his first career NFL touchdown for the winner, to make it a happy day in Detroit. It's good that it happened in front of their fans, too. Glad it was a home game there. Then the biggest faller of the week, we got to talk about the negative here, Rich Bisaccia, who has been really bad the last few weeks. He's down 4 spots overall to 25th. Down 3 spots in CCI to 28th. Had our second and third worst 4th down decisions of this week. 4th and 4 on the Las Vegas on his own 48-yard line, down 7 in the first quarter. Still down 7 in the second quarter. 4th and 5 on the Washington 48. Chose to punt in both situations. So really more of the same from him. Kind of thrown into a rough spot there in Las Vegas with Gruden. Everything that was going on for him resigning there and kind of getting thrown into the fire. But has not been very good, not really making a good case to come on as full-time head coach next season.
Who remains at the bottom of the barrel?
Mike Tomlin is still bottom, but Joe Judge is catching up. He falls 1 spot, passing Robert Saleh for 31st. Really not a surprise if you followed the Giants at all or even have followed us. This week, he had a decision. He punted on 4th and 4 or less between his own 48 and Miami 46 while tied or trailing multiple times. So that midfield area we talk about a lot as being a pretty low risk kind of go. Maybe not the lowest risk, say if you're into that 40 and 35 yard line, but still midfield you're losing. You're a team like the Giants. Like we're even accounting for Mike Glennon at quarterback at that point. So the differences were a little bit less. Should have gone for it though. And we see that really too often from Joe Judge. If it weren't for Mike Tomlin being as bad as he has been this season, Joe Judge would be last. So it's going to be a race to avoid last place for those two. Might have a surprise. Might have a guy fall down in the next couple of weeks, but those two are kind of bring it up the back there.
Do we think that Judge and Saleh owe Mike Tomlin a Christmas card just to thank him for being so consistently bad that they probably won't fall to that last place?
Yeah, maybe not Judge. Saleh maybe. Saleh's been pretty good. He had a good one of our best decisions this week. Joe Judge, not so much.
Not so much.
Yeah.
But he's not on the hot seat, okay? Because we rolled out a new segment last week known as the Hot Seat Tracker, where we evaluate decisions made by a head coach who's in the news or rumored to possibly be on the verge of being let go by their said team. The cries for last week were about Matt Nagy, This week, not as loud, but Mike Zimmer's name has come up in the media over the last couple of years as a coach who may be nearing the end of his tenure in Minnesota. Since he took the job in 2014, he's gone 69, 54, and 1 in regular season play and is 2 and 3 in the playoffs. And after a 7-9 record in his first season, he had 5 straight seasons with at least 8 wins until last season's 7-9 record. So it's not all bad for Mike Zimmer when you look at it from, a far away view. But they're only 5 and 7 right now. They still are firmly in the playoff picture. But does the data suggest whether or not he should or should not be on the hot seat?
Yeah, he's an interesting one. So he's looking at just the team that he's known for his defenses. They were top 7 in 4 straight seasons till last year. They were 18th. Part of that had to do with just a ton of injuries they had on defense. Was really a rough season. This season, though, they're only 17th. The offense is top 10 for a 3rd straight season. And the thing about Zimmer is he's actually been less conservative this year as far as their offense. They're throwing the ball a lot more. Usually they've been kind of a running team, not really throwing the ball as much. But this year they've done that. He's also been less conservative on 4th down. So he had one really bad game back in week 2 against Arizona. Had like 6 or 7 4th down errors that totaled up close to 30% cumulatively in win probability loss in that game. But since then, he's been pretty good. He had 2 really good calls against the Chargers a couple weeks ago. One of them sealed that game at the end. 2 really good calls against San Francisco last week on a couple 4th and goals. He was 21st overall last season in our coach rankings and 25th in CCI. He did have one good call his biggest call was against Seattle. Late in the game, they were up 5. It was 4th and 1 on the Seattle 6. They went for it but didn't get it. Seattle, Russell Wilson drove down, scored to win the game with 15 seconds left. It almost kind of seems like for the rest of the season that kind of deterred him from going forward on 4th down.
Gun-shy.
Yes, and this season though he's been pretty good. Early on he made the mistakes. And he's kind of gone the opposite this year. But then in 2019, he was 12th overall and 17th in CCI. So he's not as high this year. I think he's at 23rd in CCI. He's moved up, though, from 29th in the last 4 or 5 weeks since we debuted our head coach ranking. So I think with him, it's more of they're always in these close games. It seems like they lose more often than not. I think fans are just kind of getting tired of them. Kind of the same thing every single year, that it may be more so due to just the overall team environment than it is at least his 4th down decision making. He's been pretty good this year. Maybe he's trying to save his job that way. Who knows? Do
you find that one play or one decision that a coach makes can oftentimes dictate what they do for the remaining portion of a season? Like, can you generally pinpoint it was this call and then we saw the change in the way that he was doing things?
Yeah, as far as 4th down decisions go, a lot of times we do see, especially when it's a really big one that everyone talks about, and they make the right call, they don't get it, and then after that they're like, I really got hammered for that, and it's like they think about it a little bit more often and think of it as similar when they're completely separate events, obviously different games, different circumstances. Sure. And if you're expected to convert a 4th down, say, or a 4th and 2 or 3 where you're at 50%, you don't get it. The numbers would say, you're going to get it the next thing with 2-point conversions. We kind of talk about the situation when you're down 14 or 15 and you go for it the first time, you don't get it. You expect to get that next one and still tie it. But a lot of times, especially with certain coaches, you can tell that they go for it. They fail and they're like, oh man, I don't know if I want to do that again. In the back of their mind.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine just blocking that out and moving on.
McCarthy is one we talk about though. Wasn't doing that until the last few weeks. He has dropped really far since we kind of gave him credit. He moved to the top and I think he's down to like 11th, 10th or 11th. CCI, he's dropped down to the 20s now. So he's going the opposite direction.
Is that Carlito Frito?
Yes.
Okay.
Carlito Frito is certainly happy with that one.
So we'll keep an eye on Mike Zimmer, of course. We're keeping an eye on Matt Nagy, who, of course, those rumors on the verge of possibly being ousted in Chicago are hot and heavy right now. So it's time for us to transition and throw some things. This is our challenge flag portion of our show where we pick a coaching error from the week prior and we throw the challenge flag, challenging his decision. We'll explain why it's a bad call in terms of win probability maximization. Who are you throwing the challenge flag on first this week?
Let's see if I can throw mine as well as you did last week.
Yeah, well, good luck. Nope.
Not as good.
Need a lot more force.
We'll see next time. This week, I'm going Matt Nagy. Propped him up a bit last week. We mentioned in he was in our hot seat segment, but said he had actually been pretty good. This week he dropped 1 spot in CCI, but he's still 10th, 21st overall. He had one really bad decision this week. Late first half, they were down 14 to the Cardinals, who are a far superior opponent. Kyler Murray was back in this one and had a field day against Chicago. It was 4th and 2 at the Arizona 49. Sends his offense out there thinking, all right, he's going to go for it. He knows he's down big. It's not going to get any better if he punts. he takes the old, let's try and draw them off sides, let's get a delay a game and just move it back to punt. So they were already below 10%, so it doesn't move into our top 10. I think it was actually like 16th or 15th or 16th in our errors this week, but they were already below 10%, I said, so it ended up being about over a 20% relative error, so we cost them about a fifth of their chance to win. Just from that conservative decision of kind of not really giving up at that point. It's still early in the game, but in a way, just you've got to go for it at that point. You're in a season that there's not much going for you right now, and if you can't get into it there, I think Arizona ended up going down and getting a field goal anyway before the half, so it really didn't help him out much at all.
So he's 10th in CCI, 21st overall, and the guy that I'm going to throw the challenge flag on is in a similar situation. He dropped one spot in CCI, so he's at 9th, and he's 20th overall, and that's Urban Meyer of the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think you gotta.
We don't have very good throws.
I think you gotta flick it though. I think you flick up with it. So obviously the Jacksonville Jaguars are always severe underdogs.
Yep.
They were a 14-point underdog against the LA Rams. It was late in the first half. They were down by 6. 4th and 6 on LA's 42-yard line, and instead of being aggressive in that situation against a really good offense, they ended up driving. I mean, they punted instead of going for it. And they ended up driving down, and LA hit their field goal to take a 16-7 lead at halftime. You're such a major underdog. Just be aggressive in that situation. And I was surprised by the situation, but obviously it's Urban Meyer. So
I don't even think they scored any more points. That could be wrong. They might have gotten a field goal or another touchdown. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, that's a situation. At the 42, if you're not going to kick a field goal there for them, they've got, I think, a rookie kicker who's been pretty good this year, hit the game winner over in London against Miami, but you've got to go. You can't punt there.
You punted it, and they went down and scored a field goal anyways. So they're going to score regardless because the offense is so good. So why don't you just try your luck there just at the end of half, and see what happens. So I didn't love that call.
Completely agree. And I'm actually, before we move on to, want to throw one more challenge flag.
Oh, do you want me to go get one?
Pretend to throw one. There we go. It's going to be on. Oh, we got our challenge flag. All right, let's see how I can.
Thank you from our invisible helper. Oh, that was
a good one. That's a good one. This one, though, is going to the college ranks. Throwing one on Kirby Smart.
Really?
So, obviously a very good coach. Georgia is always near the top of the rankings overall in the SEC. But in the biggest game of the year, had a very questionable decision late. It was 4th and 10 from the Alabama 49, right around midfield. They were set to go for it. They're down 14 at this point with 7 minutes left. They had a false start, pushed it to 4th and 15, and chose to punt. You're already going for it at 4th and 10. You're clearly in desperation mode. You're 7 minutes left against an Alabama team that's pretty much dominated the whole game. And you choose to punt because it's 5 more yards. What happens is Alabama takes up 5 minutes, kicks a field goal, makes it a 3-score game, and at that point it's essentially impossible for Georgia to get 17 points in 2 minutes. Also with no timeouts. They used all 3 of their timeouts on Alabama's drive. So that one was very questionable. I think Kirby Smart would take that one back if he could. I don't really think it would have made that big of a difference. 4th and 15 is tough, but still you've got to at least give your team a shot.
Doesn't matter. Alabama is Georgia's kryptonite.
They always find a way.
I know. And as up and down as Alabama has been this season, to go in and do that in the SEC title game. Bryce Young obviously was phenomenal, but not the best decision from Kirby Smart. It will be interesting to see how Georgia responds, obviously down in Miami against Michigan later on
a big one.
At the beginning of January. So 3 challenge flags this week. Maybe we'll add a 4th next week, but we're going to transition to our Gold Whistle Awards of the week. We love to give credit where credit's due. So let's give out our Gold Whistle Awards where we pat them on the back for making great calls during the week. And this typically is under the radar decisions that miss our top 5, but still deserve the credit.
Yeah.
So who's your first
Golden
whistle going to?
Golden Whistle goes to Pete Carroll, who we hammer on a lot. At least I do. He's not very good when it comes to 4th downs. I think I actually saw a quote from him is there last week or the week before talking about, in his USC days, he was more aggressive because USC, he had the best players. They were just so dominant. But he got, getting to the NFL now, and in his older age, perhaps he becomes more conservative with his play calling, his investments. I don't know. But 29th overall, he did move up 1 spot in CCI, but he moved out of last place into 31st. But I'm going to give him some credit here because he made a good call. It helped him move up in that CCI ranking out of the bottom. It was 4th and 6 on their own 27-yard line. Watching this game, there's no way he's going to go for it at all. Sends out the punt team. You're like, shock. 4th and 6 is a little bit of a, we still had it as a go, but it's not as strong. especially against a top 10 defense, it's not going to be a huge boost to your win probability, but he ran a fake punt. Travis Homer took it 73 yards for a touchdown to give them the early lead. Only about a 1% increase in pre-snap win probability, but still, it's when you're making the right decision, those add up if you're making those right decisions over and over in the game. And you're going to have more situations that are 4th and 1s, 4th and 2s. Hopefully he can keep it up, see if he can move up. If not, he's going to drop down again. He's only about 5 or 6%, I think, ahead of Mike Tomlin for last in the CCI metric. So we'll see. I don't expect Tomlin to make a run up. So as long as Carroll doesn't continue to fall down, he might be able to move up a little bit. But good call from Pete Carroll this week.
You're evolving. I can't believe you're giving him credit. Good for you.
Hopefully Pete Carroll can evolve as well. This is the start.
I'm going to give the Golden Whistle Award to Vic Fangio. I don't know about you. I find 4th downs stressful. Makes my hands sweat every time a team decides. It doesn't even matter if I have a rooting interest or not. I just find them to be very, very stressful. Vic Fangio decides to go for it in one drive 3 different times on 4th down. 2 of them were in our top 7 of the week, plus 1 under the radar decision. It was 4th and 1 at the KC 46. Go for it, convert. 4th and 7 at the KC 43. Go for it, convert. And then 4th and 2 at the KC 8-yard line. And while they didn't score any points, they still held on to the ball for 11 minutes, which you keep Patrick Mahomes off the field. So that's still obviously a great run by the Denver Broncos. I was just really, really impressed that he went for it not once, not twice, but 3 times.
And he was able to go for it a second and third time because he went for it and got it. If you punt on that first one, you don't even have the opportunity after that. Vic Fangio doing really well. He's one that's been he's a little bit higher than you would think. He's 12th overall, moved up a little bit, 11th in CCI. He was kind of further down the list last year. He's also a defensive-minded guy that kind of an old-school coach as well. But it's good to see him knowing, a lot of times you'll see coaches in these games still be like, all right, well, I'm going to punt. I don't want to give them good field position or you get down close. Let's just take a field goal. He knew the field goals weren't going to beat the Chiefs, and he stuck with it. And it was awesome to see.
Yeah, it was. 11 minutes of possession. That's a lot of time.
It sucks to not get any points, obviously.
I know, all that work, but still keeping them off the field. All right, let's pick our Week 14 head-to-head coaching matchups we're most looking forward to. Just to be clear, these selections don't focus on storylines or on-field matchups, but rather what we're most interested to see from the head coaches on the sidelines. Who are you most looking forward to watching?
This week, I think both of both of ours are good matchups on the field as well, but good, kind of interesting coaching matchups. We've got, for me, it's Buffalo and Tampa Bay, Sean McDermott, Bruce Arians. Sean McDermott's been really good. Overall, he's 5th overall, 15th in CCI, so kind of middle of the pack. He has some moments where he goes for it. Other times he makes some kind of head-scratching decisions. But Bruce Arians is 14th overall and only 29th in CCI. He is one that almost kind of refuses to go for it because he knows who his team is. Frank and I actually, in an interview last year, talking about heading into the game, they were asking us about it and said, if the Super Bowl comes down to 4th down decisions, we'd expect it to be the Chiefs that come out on top because of Andy Reid. And it never even got into that situation. Yeah. Arians didn't even have to worry about the 4th downs in the Super Bowl. They were up so big. But this one will be interesting because the teams are so evenly matched. Buffalo's 4th in our EPI metric. Tampa Bay is 1st. So it should be a close game. And if it does come down to a 4th down decision late, we'd probably give the edge to Sean McDermott making the right decision versus Bruce Arians.
Fair enough. I am most looking forward to LA Rams, Sean McVay versus Arizona's Cliff Kingsbury. And at face value, you look at these two guys, and I think that they're so similar. Obviously, they're younger guys, great offensive minds, but they're also in different situations in terms of the decisions that they make. I don't quite realize until, obviously having these discussions with you, that Sean McVay is not a very aggressive guy when it comes to making these, tough decisions. He's 17th overall, 26th in CCI, but 7th in EPI, whereas Cliff Kingsbury, you mentioned at the top, he's moved into 3rd overall, who's done a really nice job this season, 8th in CCI and 3rd in EPI. So while they are similar at face value, they're in different situations with their teams in terms of what they tend to do in high-pressure situations. So I am looking forward to seeing that matchup between those two.
Yep, and with Kingsbury, he was up close to the top last year. I think he was top 10. The interesting thing with him was if it wasn't for, I think it was 2 games, 2 decisions that he had that were like 20% errors. Other than that, he would have been like top 5 in CCI because he was making the right calls all the time. He would have a 4th and 5 at the opponent's 45 or 40 and go for it. And this season, he's been really good across the board. And then Sean McVay, you mentioned, we saw last week, we had him, I think, on our golden whistle and our challenge flag. In the same game, he can be, be really aggressive and then be really conservative. So to your point, he's a lot lower than people might think when it comes just based on the overall perception of him and kind of the things that you hear people say about him.
What's the highest percentage of an error you've seen on a decision?
I know we had the Broncos a few years ago. They were down 4, kicked a field goal with like 2 minutes left. That was 25 or 26, I think.
Okay.
Since then, we've had a couple that are 21s, 22 of them.
Okay, so anything
had 2 of the
above
top
20
3,
is
When you get really, above 10 is big.
Okay.
Above 15 is a lot. The 20s are almost the ones that you look at where if we had a 20%er looking at our best decisions, we'd be like, oh, that's an obvious go. Those are the ones that they missed. You're like, we would consider that where anyone's watching the game, like you have to go for it, and the coach still makes the wrong decision. Those are the most interesting ones to me because coaches are getting paid a lot of money to do what they do, and then you have everyone else that sits there at the end of a game that knows it's the right decision.
We're all coaches sitting on our sofas, obviously.
Exactly.
We should be paid the big bucks, clearly. That'll do it for another Coach Ranking show here at Edge Sports. Thank you, of course, for your time and analysis as always. Follow Edge Sports on all social media platforms. Make sure you like and subscribe to our Edge Sports YouTube channel so that you can watch our weekly Coach Ranking shows each week and then obviously get betting analysis as well. Thanks so much.